can hear you all. Let me cut my camera on so you can. Just be aware that Dr. JJ Evans has begun recording on this meeting. And so if you could please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And also if you are not muted and you need to answer a call to put it on mute or hang up, please do not put it on hold because we do not want to hear your elevator music while we're having this session. So again, thank you all for being on. We have not had these calls in a while, and so we wanted to go ahead and kick these calls off again. For those who are new to the registrars and admissions field within the community college, we had decided a couple of years ago to have calls, professional calls, so that you and your colleagues will have an opportunity to have conversations and discussions about what's going on in your areas. We made sure that we did not at the system office control these calls. We didn't want to present a lot of things because it's really not a lot to present, but we really wanted to let you have an opportunity to converse with one another since you really don't get to a lot. But today we are going to veer from that a little bit. As you all may know, the system office has an auditing department, and many of you already know because they come around and they audit your files and your processes. Well, we have had some restructuring within the system office, and we have pretty much a whole new auditing team. And so what I wanted to do today was to give you an opportunity to meet that team and fill over anything that you may need to know as regards to them coming to your campuses and things they may look for while they're auditing your admissions and registrars files. And so what I will do is I will go ahead and open the floor up to Miss Tammy Hill, who is the director. Tammy, you're the director of the department, correct?
Yes, I am the director.
Is director. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor up to Mrs. Hill so she can go ahead and introduce herself and her team to you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. Sorry I'm joining a few minutes late. I was having some technical issues with my computer this morning. It looks like I still am, but thank you for this opportunity to introduce our team to you. We are now fully staffed. I am happy to say we have, for the last few years, we have had some times of short staffing, but luckily over the last few months, we've been able to get our full team in play. I'm happy to announce we have 2 brand new examiners that joined our team within the last few months. And then we had one that joined last year. Most recently, we had Veronica Howard join our team. She is coming to us from a college, and she just started with us in September. I think she may be on the call. I'm not sure. I also have Veronica. Are you joining us?
I'm here, Tammy.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome Veronica to our team. She is actually stationed out at Nash Community College, and she will be working from there. But of course, as everybody knows, we're mostly on the road. She has come to us with several years experience working in the community college system and brings some new ideas to us. We also have Sandra Jarvis that has joined us. Most of you have probably seen her name if you have not actually had time to meet with her. She is coming from the system office. She has worked with our team for the last several years as the executive assistant to Brian Jenkins, our executive director. So you may know her. She has years and years of experience with the system office and has definitely brought that experience to our team. Last year, we had Sabra Matney. Oh, going back to Sandra just a minute. Right now, she is working from the system office. We hope to get her out into a college soon when things settle down and we are back on the road. I think Sandra has joined us. Sandra, are you with us too this morning?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, and also we have, as I was saying, Sabra Matney is a part of our team. She is working out at Mitchell Community College as her home. But of course, right now she is out on the road working on at a college. She came to us from the community college system and worked with us where she worked for many years, and she has done a wonderful job in the past year and has added a lot to our team. And then our final compliance examiner is Amanda Toller. Most of you have probably met with her or at least talked with her through email or by phone conversations. She has been with the compliance team the longest, and she's been here several years. Even though she was with us for a few years, she left and she came back. She is stationed at Wake Tech, and today she was unable to join us on the call because she is actually meeting with staff at a college, completing a compliance review as we speak. As Monty said, I am the director. I am the director of compliance service, and I took over this position in March as COVID hit, and it has been a roller coaster ride for all of us through the last few months, but we're slowly getting back on the road. Many of you have met me, or I have met you as I have completed compliance reviews across the system, and I'm excited to take our team to the next level and work with all the colleges. And that was the reason I had asked, or I had spoken with Monty about letting us introduce our team. And I want to get our faces and our names out there so that when you have a question, you feel comfortable calling us, or emailing us, or asking questions. And we are here to help coach you through the situations that are happening now, and whatever we can do to help you prepare for compliance reviews. The other member of our team is Brian Jenkins. He is our executive director, and he works at the system office, and he also works with state board. But he is our leader of the team, and he is the one that signs all the reports and letters that go out to the colleges. So he keeps us together, and we have all worked together to make our team move into the future of compliance and move into coaching.
That's to make sure the calendar committee has power.
So as what I wanted to do this morning basically was just to introduce our team, let everybody know our names, where we're at. Feel free to contact us. We are always out on the road. So the best way to get in touch with any of us is through email. Phone calls, we are not in the office very often because we are doing on-site reviews again. So you can always reach us through email. Most of us have our email addresses listed on the compliance. You can always go to the North Carolina Community College's website, and you can get our emails from there. You're always welcome to email any of us, and we usually work as a team to answer questions. As I said, phone calls are hard to catch us, but you're also welcome to call us at any time. As far as what's going on in compliance right now, we are trying to finish up the reviews that were scheduled for fiscal year 2019-20. We were in the middle of our reviews when COVID shut us down and we were pulled off the road, so we could not complete. We are now completing the final reviews for last year with hopes of moving into fiscal year 2021 reviews in November and after Christmas. So those of you that are scheduled for a review this fiscal year, we're coming. We just don't know when yet, and we are working feverishly to finish last year so that we can begin next year. And we know there are a lot of concerns about what the review will look like because of COVID, but we are here to help you, and we're going to work through everything together, and we will work through all the questions and concerns. And as I've said, many of you have probably heard me on other calls, the number one thing you can do is document, document, document. And as long as you're documenting what you're doing, that will lead us in the right direction of making sure that we're doing what we need to do for compliance. With that being said, I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk to you about and let you know what was going on. The biggest, I will take questions, but I would prefer if we could have questions about the compliance review process. If there are general questions, I'm happy to answer those, but if there are specific questions or questions that are for your college or that need more information, if you would please email us those, I would appreciate it so we can give them the time that it needs, and I don't want to take away from the time that you have for your meeting this morning. And also, as I said, we usually answer questions as a team, so we make sure we're all giving you the same information. But if there are general questions about the compliance review process, I would be happy to answer those. You can either put those questions in the chat box or you can ask me those online.
Go ahead, team. The floor is open. I'm looking at the chat box now.
Maybe they're like me and they haven't had enough coffee yet.
Right. So go ahead.
This morning.
Is there anything that you would like to know from the auditing team at this moment?
Monty, it looks like there was one question that came in. It says, which platform works best for auditing purposes for online attendance?
I'm going to make sure that I'm understanding the question. Are you asking those? We are leaving the platforms up to the college. They, it's not up to us what platforms you are using. It is what we will need to do is be able to see the online attendance to ensure that students have entered prior to the census point and that they did not withdraw or drop prior to the census point. What platform you're using is up to you, but we will need to see that documentation to verify that the students did enter and remain in the class.
So question.
I hope that answers your question.
So question, to Dr. Bush's question. When you come to the campus, would you prefer the access with the system itself printed and handed to you? Which would work best?
Wonderful question. At this point in time, we are not able to get into the electronic system. We are still using paper documentation for our reviews. We are looking at some ways that in the future we can move to looking at things electronically. Right now, we just don't have that capability. When we're working out on the road, we're working out of our little laptop, and it is much easier for us on site to have paper documentation to verify the online attendance. And then,
I'm sorry, Dr. Bush also asked, what about signatures for attendance rosters?
we do look for signatures on the attendance rosters. Code does state that the instructor has to that the record is complete. So at this point, we are looking for attendance roster signatures. I know that through COVID, some instances have come about where you've had to use electronic signatures. So we would have to look at that on an individual basis when we're out on our review.
All right. Also for new and less seasoned and registrars administrators who may have never gone through this process, are you looking for compliance issues related to state board code or related to processes that have been published by the college, or what are you looking for? What type of?
Okay, we review based on state board code. Everything that we look at is based on state board code. With that being said, we also look at numbered memos that have come out from the system office. We look at college policy, but the basis of our review is the state board code. But we also do look at those numbered memos, and if there are questions about that come up that we need to look at college policy, we will follow those too. But we write our reports and we base our reviews on state board code.
Okay, we have a question from Eileen Bush, who asks, she said they print off their rosters from Moodle and don't have signatures. So what would you recommend they do?
Okay, Eileen, we may have to talk about that. I may want to see exactly what you're printing off and what it looks like, because typically you have the attendance roster and then the Moodle documentation is verification to the attendance roster. So it's the actual attendance roster would be signed by the instructor, and then the Moodle documentation is verification of the attendance roster. But we can talk more about that if you would like to give me a call, or I'll give you a call later and we can talk more about that.
Okay. Elizabeth Patterson says colleague uses electronic signatures. Is this okay?
Yes. If you're using Colleague, usually you have a web attendance roster that is printed out, and it does print that electronic signature onto the roster. So that is what we've been looking at.
Okay. Another question. Career and college promise processes requires a lot of signatures, particularly from the VP level. Any discussions on minimizing the number of CCP signatures that are required, or adding or the designee to the CCP guidelines?
I cannot answer that question. That is not a compliance question. That is a programs question. So that would need to go to CCP staff and I will be happy to pass that along. They make the decisions about what signatures are needed on their paperwork, and then we just follow their guidance.
Yeah, I would probably email that to Lisa Eads or Michelle. What's Michelle's last name? Lair. Okay, question. Do faculty need to sign/date Moodle documentation?
As I've said, the attendance roster must be signed by the instructor. It is a very good practice or best practice to have the faculty also sign and date the Moodle documentation if they are using that for verification purposes. We have had instances in reviews where the instructor, for whatever reason, did not sign the official attendance roster, but they did sign the Moodle documentation. And so it was helpful to have that so that they were in compliance, showing that the instructor did verify that the documentation was accurate. So it is a best practice for them to sign that.
Okay. Ms. Lair, Mrs. Stanley, Ms. Lair said there are currently no plans for that to be the case for CCP signatures.
Thank you, Michelle, for helping out there. I did not know you were on the call.
She's on the call. Yes. So are there any other questions? I think that's the last question/comment in the chat box. So are there any other questions that you may want to know from our auditors? Since I got one more. I have one more. Since you're now getting on track during this COVID time of the COVID pandemic and you know all this change on the campuses, are you seeing any recurring challenges or issues as you're going through your 1920 audits that may need to be addressed from other colleges before you get to them, so they won't have that challenge when you come to their college?
Well, like I said, what we're looking at now are the records from summer 18, fall 18, and spring 19. So it was prior to COVID. So the issues that we're seeing now are not COVID related. It's this, and we're not seeing any unusual occurrences of issues. It's the same issues that we have talked about on several different calls. of, making sure that your census dates are correct and the number of students are correct, the scheduled hours are correct, making sure that with BLET that your students are not withdrawing prior to the census point. We are trying to look at some different things with those areas, but as far as COVID related, we're not there yet because we will not begin looking at any records that occurred during spring of 20 until we start our new reviews in November and December. And I'm sure as we get on the campuses, we're going to get more and more things that are going on now. So I'm sure as we're going forward, I will have more information in that area. But as of right now, there aren't a lot of things I can talk about that we have seen because we've only done a couple of reviews each since we did not go back on the road until September. And we are now working on our second set of reviews that we have started. And the biggest issues we're seeing is we're trying to make sure that we are following all safety protocols. And when we're talking with staff, we're looking at those. So I'm hoping to have more information about that question as we go forward, and adding to that what's going on with the colleges and what we're seeing. We're trying to talk with our teams. Our teams are so busy right now, we're having a hard time even talking to each other. But as we move forward, we're going to start gathering information, and hopefully through these new platforms and through these new meetings, I can share those types of things with you as we move along.
All right. Okay. So we have a couple more questions. What about, and please forgive me for the noise. Someone is mowing the yard outside and it's loud. I hate it. But someone
There's
asked,
no
what
one
about?
mowing at the system office.
I'm not at the system office.
I know, sir. I'm picking on you.
Someone asked, what about self-service attendance rosters? There is no electronic signature available on self-service attendance rosters.
That is a question that is going around now. I know there is a project that is working on self-service attendance rosters and the lack of an electronic signature. So that is we do not know where that is headed yet. That is not going to be a decision made by compliance, although we have been our input has been asked for on that. But we are going to have to look at that very carefully and decide where we're going with that and how we will use the electronic signature if we are using the self-service attendance rosters. So more information is coming on that one too as we move forward and we move away from web attendance, and a lot of colleges are using more of the self-service attendance rosters.
Okay, this next question is something you may see more of with so many colleges going to online learning as a primary source. So this question is, most of our courses are online, synchronous. Virtual class meetings are also being recorded for students to access if they do not attend the virtual session at that specific time. Is it okay if students have classes that conflict with this type of meeting types?
It's a good question, and I have heard that is something that we're going to have to look at. As of now, we have been given the guidance that there are synchronous meetings, and when those meetings are set up, you are expecting the students to be there synchronously. And I know that some colleges have been using virtual sessions so that they could not be there, but that is something that we're going to have to talk about as a team and talk about with program staff and senior staff at the system office and decide, because it comes up as an overlap if there's a conflict types. And I think we have to be very careful with that, because if you're setting up that class as a synchronous class, you are expecting the students to be there at those times unless it's an unusual situation, just like you would expect them to be there in a face-to-face class. So we're going to have to talk about that one. I will put that one on my list of things to carry forward and talk to senior staff about before I make a committed answer to that question. Because you're right, it's something we're going to start seeing a lot more of as we move through these new ways of delivering our instruction.
All right, next question. Again, I apologize that Instructors send their census reports via email and we attach them with the attendance rosters. Will this work in lieu of signatures?
In cases that we have seen this, we have asked the college to make sure that it is covered under their electronic signature policy. If you are going to use, I know that in some cases it has had to be, of course, we always would like to see the actual instructor sign the attendance roster. But I know that during COVID, there have been some instances that the only way you could get the signature on the attendance roster was through email. Again, those are usually unusual situations or there are underlying reasons for that. We do ask that you make sure that those electronic signatures are covered under your college's electronic signature policy. Any more questions? I'm not seeing any more in the chat box.
Please ask away. This is a safe zone. I'm telling you now, if you have questions about auditing, this is the time to ask. She's not catching names. She's not asking what college you're from. And so ask your questions. So if you have any questions as it relates to auditing, ask now.
Good morning. This is Abraham Donuts from Durham Tech. I do
Hi.
have a question in relation to the attendance requirements for synchronous classes. And so one of the challenges that we're experiencing are we recognize that students have issues of access and equity when it comes to technology. And so what are some considerations or exceptions that are being considered, especially when these students believed when they signed and registered for their classes that they would be seated courses?
As I said before, the biggest thing that I can recommend is any of these unusual circumstances where students cannot get into the class for whatever reason, document what has happened, talk with, the senior staff at your college, make policies about what you're going to do in these types of situations, document the policy, and make sure that you're following that policy. And when we come out and if that file is pulled and we have questions, then that documentation will serve to explain what happened in these types of situations. We understand that these things are happening and we're going to be open-minded to what we can do, but documentation is going to be the key to all of those situations. I've had several questions where students tried to sign in, but for whatever reason they could not get in on that particular day at that particular time, which made it appear that they did not get in prior to. And I've seen those unusual circumstances. It was a technology issue. Make sure that it is documented in the file so that if we ask questions, you can tell us what happened, because it could be 2 years before we actually see what you're looking at and you may have forgotten. And if you've got documentation, it helps for us to have the conversation as to what happened. Do you need more? If you need more information, I'll be happy to talk with you about that. But
no, I think that suffices.
Documentation.
Thank you.
So pretty much what you're saying in a nutshell is because we're in a unfamiliar territory, this is a time unlike any other. So colleges are having to make it up sometimes as they go along because they're doing things that we customary done. And so as long as they document, and it doesn't become a reoccurring thing, but we document what's happening, then you will take that into consideration and account when you audit that school.
Yes, that is what we're saying, but also we know that this is going to be an ongoing problem or an ongoing issue. So I would recommend you go ahead and start putting procedures and policies in place so that there wouldn't be so many instances where you have to have this extra documentation to explain what happened, because it's going to open up discussion but at least if you've got documentation, we can use that in consideration for making a decision.
Okay, so Sarah Shoemaker has a question.
Okay.
So this is a question that we've put out across the state, and I know a lot of us are wondering this. Are you familiar with the Finish First North Carolina process?
I am not. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So are you familiar with reverse transfer, where students can opt in
That's probably more of the program student services issues more than compliance, but I'm willing to listen and see what I can help with.
Okay, so we have a policy that if a student in this Finish First North Carolina, it looks at a student across every program we offer and says whether or not they can graduate, how close they are, etc. And so students don't opt into this process like they do with reverse transfer. Our policy states that they must provide a physical signature in order for us to change their program and declare that to graduate, etc., etc. But with this system, it's students, of course, who are maybe no longer enrolled, and of course lots of students who aren't eligible for graduation that are not in that program. So our question was, do we have to garner a signature from the student in order to put them in that program and graduate them with those identified credentials? Or there are a lot of schools who have said things such as they'll send a notification to the student, you have 30 days to object, and then we'll graduate you. Or they've put a statement in their catalog that they're part of the Finish First process and they're looking for credentials and they have the right to graduate you, etc.
Okay. I could probably speak to that, but that is more of a programs question or student services question. So I know Monty is on the call, and maybe we can figure out who we need to talk to that one about, Monty.
Yeah, let's talk to, it'll probably be me and Patrick Holyfield, who's the chair from the system office side, and I'm on the committee also. But I'm assuming that because the student opts in on the UNC system side, that counts as permission or a signature from the student. So we can look at that. Do me a favor, Sarah, send me and Patrick an email, and we'll look at.
Monty, this is Gwen. That is the way that was designed.
Sorry.
No, you just remember the next time you need me, I'm gonna pretend I'm not on that committee. Just know that. And I have plenty of witnesses that said that you did not include me, but that is the way that was designed. Be quiet. Dr. Hickman, you lost it. But that is the way that was designed. When they opt in, that is considered their signature to say that they want to participate.
Oh, great.
It's always been my concern that some of the way it's set up is that some students will tell us that they don't have an option but to opt in. So, but I know that that's not the way it's set up. It is optional. What it is the first time they log into their UNC portal, they don't have to answer the question. The second time, they don't have. By the third time, they do have to say yes or no, whether or not they want to opt in. And once they say yes, I want to opt in, that is considered their electronic signature to give us permission to process them through the reverse transfer, because without them opting in, we do not receive, no community college receives their data at that point. We don't start receiving the data until after the student has opted in to the program. So that is their electronic signature to say, yes, you can graduate me from that if I meet the requirements.
Great job, Gwen. Thank you.
UND.
I am. So just to let you know, if you need to send an email about that, I would say Gwen Whitaker, Patrick Holyfield. The reason I say Patrick, because he's the chair of that committee for the community college side. I'm a non-voting member, so I do have some say, but usually the committee itself makes those decisions. So I do not think that is something that our auditors will be looking at this point. So because it's not part of state board code. So Sarah, you're kind of safe on that a little bit, but I will say still send email to Patrick, Gwen, and myself. Even though Gwen is giving you a response, it's good having it in writing sometimes, and we'll look forward. Also, Michelle Dupuy has a question.
Hey, Tammy.
Hey, Michelle.
Quick question. You talked about policy a lot, and making it our policy to do certain things. Do you differentiate between policy and procedure?
That is a very good question. That's going to be more of a college decision. What is policy? What is procedure? For us, we're just, as I said, we're going to base everything on state board code. That's what we have to live by, so to speak. But then we would defer to what are your college procedures versus policies, and that would be a college decision.
Right. So if we have a electronic signature procedure versus a policy, do you look at that any differently?
I do not. That
Okay.
is, you know, we're just going to ask what is your policy, but I do know that in the colleges, they do look at procedures versus policy different. So you need to talk with amongst your staff and to be policy versus procedure, because what we're going to base everything on is state board code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And to add on to that, that's where, you know, I keep saying document, 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 and it will help to open up the conversation if there is an issue. But again, it's not going to supersede state board code. We still have to follow state board code no matter what. That's going to be what we go back to, and other policies and procedures and things are not going to supersede that. We still fall back on state board code and general statutes when we're looking at our review. The documentation may just help us to see what happened and to make a decision about how to go further, but we're still going to have to follow state board code.
Okay, another question. For blended classes, less than 50% online, do students have to enter the online portion prior to census, or are they okay as long as they do online work at some point during the semester? They entered seated prior to census.
For a hybrid or blended class, as long as the student enters either seated or online prior to the census point, they can be counted, and do not withdraw or drop prior to or on the census point. But they can enter either one, either seated or online.
All right.
I will say if they enter online and not in the seated portion, that documentation to verify that entrance date would be requested, or may be requested to be looked at to verify that entry date.
But online, you need documentation, someone asked.
Yes, we do look at the online documentation to verify the entry into the class, and we look at that because we have seen issues where when we asked for the online documentation, it was not consistent with what was on the attendance rosters, or they could not verify the information that was placed on the attendance roster. So we do request online documentation verifying the entry dates.
Such as, or just to show that they entered the class for the first time?
Yes, that they entered the class.
Okay, Mary has a question.
Oops, sorry.
Mary, was your hand raised? No. Okay.
Okay, here I am, sorry. I just want to, hi, it's good to see you. I just want to make sure I know they don't have to be in the census date on the online or the seated class prior to the census date, but would an E still have to be entered in on the attendance roster for both of those sessions, even though one of them is after the census date?
We usually do see that on both rosters. But we're just going to be looking to make sure there is an E in one place or the other. When we're looking for at the attendance roster, we have to see entry in one section, either online or seated. But typically, yes, there would be an E because of the way the system is built and doing attendance. I think that's more of a colleague question. I'm thinking, but typically you do enter an E when they enter the online section, as well as you do on the seated section of the rosters.
Okay, thank you for confirming.
And that's an or, not an and.
Well, we have to see an or, either online or on the seated, but I'm thinking that when you're doing your attendance on the rosters, when instructors are completing their attendance, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the system requires them to put an E on both. But what we're looking for is to make sure that we find an E that is on one roster or the other. But yes, I'm pretty sure that you're supposed to put an E on both rosters.
Okay, because that's what Tara was asked. She said we were always told that all rosters must have an E.
Well, if you don't have an E there, it looks like they didn't attend that part. So yes, we would, there should be an E on both rosters.
Is that a recommendation or a hard have to?
Somebody, I'm trying to read the comments. But yes, my suggestion would be, or my recommendation, and what I have coached all colleges to do is, yes, to put an E on both rosters. But for verification of entrance before census, the E can be prior to the census date, either on the online or the seated roster. We understand that sometimes the student may enter on the online roster, but not enter the seated portion until after census, or vice versa.
Okay, let's see. Any more questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill staff. We appreciate you being on the call. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for answering questions for our professionals. And if you want to stay on the call, that's fine. Please feel free to stay on. You may catch something that you may need to know or hear. So feel free to stay on, but thank you for doing that. So what we're going to transition to now is we're going to open the floor for questions and comments from all of you on the call, that you all can address that for one another. I know one thing that came up that I've been receiving emails about is the bogus admissions applications. And so I know we had a question about that. So if you have that question still, please ask it now.
Is there anything that the system office is doing to kind of help to avoid that, or will it be strictly upon each institution to make sure that they are communicating with their IT staff to resolve these bogus applications coming in?
Okay. There has been conversations with the IT department about that. And we have also spoken with College Foundation, CFNC, regarding that. And I think they're looking at solutions for that. And one thing we did ask them to do is to go ahead and send out an email or some correspondence to you all regarding that. We would, but we don't want to misrepresent what they're saying. And so they are going to send something out to the colleges regarding that.
Okay, thanks, Monty.
So there are solutions for that right now. Yes.
Thanks.
Just a quick follow-up on that. When they do identify bogus URLs, they have been blocking them. CFNC.
Right.
Well, in some cases, because this is Antonio Squad with Halifax. I got the first email, and one time we had a whole slew of those bogus applications. But in the recent last week or so, where I've had probably about 15 or 20 come in, and but I've communicated with our IT staff here on campus, kind of flagged those emails. But it seemed like even like the next day it happened again. So it's odd because they just weird, funky looking emails, and sometimes because they're a little bit different, some still slide through the cracks.
Yeah, and I think an email was sent out on July the 24th from Stephen Reeves.
Right.
And it said colleges should not auto provision email accounts until records have been verified. In addition, the recommendation is that they not automatically move records to student.
Right.
And so I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it did. I just been making sure I've been double checking and screening them a little bit closer to avoid any importation of any bogus applications. So that way our IT staff does not create an account or email addresses with the institution for them as well.
Okay, so great. So we're working with CFNC on that, and so hopefully we'll have something for you shortly. And Lachey, does that answer your question also?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. So, are there any other comments, questions, or topics you all would like to discuss with one another? We know that this is COVID. Things are going on, things are changing, and so I know some administrators are more seasoned than others, and some are spanking brand new. So if you're someone that's new, is there anything that's related to registrars admissions that you would like to know from your peers?
Monty, did you just call me old?
I did, yes.
Oh, wow.
I heard that too, Jesse. He'll need you again.
Look, Jesse, but you look good for your age. So I know I'll pay for that later.
Nice try. Nice try.
Keep on digging, Monty. Keep on digging.
Hey, Mary, I'm digging hard on purpose.
I'm over it.
Yeah, you are.
So I already got Gwen and Jesse on me now. So, all right. So is there anything else you would like to know? Kelly English asks, are there any updates on Courage for credits? I am not familiar with that. So is anyone familiar with that? Military credit assistance. Right now, I will say that Lisa Eaves and Matt Myers, they are working on the prior learning project, and I think that may fall under that project. And so we are looking at codes and processing, and we are also working with some representatives from our colleges on that. And so as soon as we have something, we will let you know. Okay, I will bring that up, Kelly. Kelly said that they really need a crosswalk. For those of you who may be on the phone, maybe calling in or may not have can't see the chat box. She said that you really need a crosswalk for that. And so I'll bring that to Dr. Eads' attention. And Ms. Laird, could you also bring that to her attention if you don't mind? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything else? Any more questions? Now, remember, this call is for you. While you're typing questions or thinking of something to ask, also, we are looking at, how do I say this? We're looking at a way to better code and identify student information as it relates to continuing education, workforce continuing education. We have a lot of scholarships. I don't know if you're aware of. I know the Financial Aid Office and Business Office has become aware. We have had a lot of scholarship programs over the past few months that require workforce continuing education students to receive. One being the GEAR Scholarship, another one being the Golden Leaf Scholarship. And so because of that, we've tasked the Financial Aid Office and the Business Office to code and continuing education to code those students and work collaboratively together to make sure that we can pull that data. One issue we're seeing, though, is that we've always treated continuing education differently than curriculum, especially as it relates to programs of study and how to pull that information to the system office. And so we're looking at ways of creating committees and stuff to figure out a way around that or to fix that process. So I may in the future tap your shoulder and say, would you be willing to serve on a committee to look at changing that process and that workflow? Because we've been asked for a lot of information from the federal government and from the state regarding those programs. We really have not figured out a way to pull that information in. And so we really, we need to figure out a way to treat Con Ed programs the same way we do curriculum programs. And so that's going to be a challenge because we haven't done it before. And so just be aware of that. Any comments or questions? Okay, so because we have none, I will go ahead and thank you for. Okay, Ms. Whitaker asked a question. Are we trying to change full-time to a one college format?
I knew it. No,
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. But no, we are having those conversations here for Psych to have a college as opposed to Con Ed and a curriculum. We're trying to bridge those together. As a matter of fact, some of the programs are in the process of what was completely done over through our Con Ed is now being brought over to curriculum, and some from curriculum is going to Con Ed. But we're working on it, and we're not in it far enough for me to have an intelligent conversation about it. But we are working on the one college module so that our Con Ed students do not feel like they are second to curriculum folks, because we get a lot of our students from our Con Ed. So we're trying to see how we can make whatever courses they took over there. We now use advanced standing, but we're trying to see how we can bridge the programs so that when a student spend time over through our EWD or ed, continuing ed side of the house, that when they have a smooth transition to curriculum and do not have to come back and repeat things that they may have done over there that could possibly work over here as well.
That's great.
And you're right, Abe, that's so long overdue. So we are working with it now to see where we can go with it. Again, not been into it long enough to have an intelligent conversation, just a simple conversation at this point.
Yeah. And just to let you know, I will say we have tried for years to pull in data on that population of students, and because of how they're treated and on the campus, I would say as far as coding and stuff in college has been really hard. And so you may be asked to standardize some of your processes as it relates to curriculum and Con Ed, and we're trying to figure out a way to best do that and to make that as simple as possible for you. But it's really hard for us to have a system that's informed when we don't treat all of our students the same as it relates to coding them. And you may believe in one college, you may not believe in it. You may want to call it one college. You may want to call it just synchronized processing. I don't know, whichever makes you feel best. But we really need to figure out a way to make sure that the information that comes in from the curriculums, the Con Ed students are the same as that comes in from curriculum, and we treat them in some similar fashion as it relates to not course offerings, but to identifying the terms and also awarding them the financial aid, because it's going to be very cumbersome with more funding coming in from the feds and from the state to do that if we don't figure out a way to simplify and standardize that process. So.
Monty, this is Ann.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things we do, we've been doing Con Ed, I would say the combined campus for last 3, 4, 5 years. That was one of my projects that I inherited, was Con Ed in conjunction with curriculum. And one of the things I try to do so that they don't feel disenfranchised is when I send out communications like com management to our curriculum students, I also involve like my Con Ed students. We do a lot with allowing them, well, first of all, we give them email addresses student email addresses because we have a lot of courses that we use web components on it. So these folks are now kind of blending in with ours. Unless you look and saw what courses they were taking, they all just look like regular students for us. So one of the things we do is we always include them in our communications. On the registration side, I work very closely with my adult high school GED guy, because since we have to report this data to the state with these folks graduating, I run after these folks to get them to come over on the curriculum side. But we realize too that a lot of the conversations and feedback I've gotten from Con Ed students, because I go to the different campuses and talk to them, is they feel like they are not a student of ours, like they're that stepchild. So we're even looking at, well, before COVID, trying to figure out why we can't give them ID cards. Because that's one thing that they don't have. Not the ones to just do the one class here and there. We looked at a breakdown of looking at the criteria, since 96 hours with a credential is what we really get our FTEs off of. So that group of students we've been working with, trying to figure out something with security in our business office to see why those folks can't get an ID card.
And that's wonderful, because that's where we're headed here at Forsyth Tech too. We have included them now with the emails, but that just recently happened where they even have an email for EWD. And then we are doing right now, it depends on the program as to whether or not our EWD or Con Ed students get IDs, but we're also working on that. So, I'm going to peep your card now that you all are ahead of us with that. I'm peeping your card, right? I'm going to see your whole hand. So, you know me, I'll reach out in a heartbeat if I don't know. So, as our conversations continue, know that I'll be reaching out.
Okay, yeah, I share, because we just kind of went to the table, got the deans involved in it. On both sides, and just said, what can we do? So we kind of went into a room, threw up stuff that are internal barriers. And since we have been talking about a one college concept for a while, we just kind of, wanted to see how we can get these folks more involved.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. See, so I'm going to tap your shoulders, ladies, to be on my committee. Thank you. So are there any other questions or concerns? I think we've reached our hour. And
do we say no now with widgets?
We're going to say no, Gwen. We are officially saying no.
Gotcha.
They're going to make me beg. Oh, okay. I'll reach out later, ladies, to this. Thank you. You and Jesse and Greg Stanley, since I seem to insult you all the time, and you take it in stride. I appreciate it. Again, thank you all for being on the call today. It's been wonderful. I do appreciate you taking time out to be on. I will probably send an invite out later for the next meeting. Again, just think of some topics or things you want to discuss, and we'll take it from there. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Talk
Thank
to you later.
Hey, Monty?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hold on one quick second?
I can.
Okay. I'm looking at having a bunch of bogus applications coming in, and I know a lot of schools have been. Is CFNC working on that?
Yeah, you didn't hear me say that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I stepped out. I apologize.
Yes. Hey,